Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for your patience. Speaker Pelosi was coming from UCLA, and so we all know that drive, right? And so the area is very, very tricky. So I'm happy to kick off the program. My name is Berenice Nunez Constant, and I'm the Vice President of Government Relations at Altamed. Thank you, thank you. We are the nation's largest federally qualified health center. So we take care of everyone, regardless of their ability to pay. And we're really, really proud to do that. We've been around for 50 years, and our roots are right here in the community of East LA. And so we're really, really happy to be here today to have a conversation around strengthening our healthcare system of the United States for all Americans. So as a trusted community partner with really deep roots here in East Los Angeles and Southern California, we have learned by experience that civic engagement is really a social determinant of health, and it really determines the success of a community and the resources that are allocated to that community. And so we established a campaign called My Vote, My Health, Mi Voto, Mi Salud, because we really felt very accountable to the communities that we serve, and we really do feel it is our mission to really provide that avenue to engage in the political process and to speak with elected officials about what's important to them. And so, again, really happy to be here today, and so I will go ahead and just introduce our first speaker, who will be providing opening remarks, and it will be Dr. Ornelas, which is the Vice President of Continuing Education and Workforce Development here at ELAC. So just a few words.
Yes,
in her capacity, she is really leading an effort to build an adult education program that serves the community adult learner population. And she's also actively engaged in several readiness initiatives that will really lead to the economic development here in East Los Angeles and the surrounding communities. Dr. Ornelas?
Yes, thank you, Bernice. Good afternoon. My name is Armida Ornelas. I want to welcome all of you to our home, East Los Angeles College. It's very exciting to have you here. I would also like to further extend this welcome on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Los Angeles Community College District, and of course our Chancellor, Francisco Rodriguez. So welcome. Very exciting. I especially want to welcome Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Congresswoman Judy Chu, Supervisor Solis, Ms. McCarthy. We are honored and excited to host a Speaker in the House discussion around protecting and strengthening healthcare for all. It is our privilege to welcome healthcare professionals, advocates, and organizations of healthcare to our college. East Los Angeles College is committed to training the next generation of healthcare professionals in several emerging healthcare professions with our allied health and nursing departments. Where are our healthcare folks in the house? Yes, yes. In addition to conferring numerous certificates and Associate of Science degrees, I'd like to take a moment, just a brief moment, Berenice, to highlight a few of our successes. Our respiratory therapy program has achieved a 90% first-time pass rate on the registered respiratory therapy exam. Way to go. Our nursing department has achieved an 81% first-time pass rate on the NCLEX exam and is developing regional BSN pathways to various local universities. Way to go, nursing. Our Health Information Technology program recently received an expanding community college apprenticeship grant, and it's expected to train an additional 150 apprentices over the next 3 years. Lastly, our Allied Health Department continues to innovate by developing several new programs in areas such as cancer information management, medical assistant, and pharmacy technology. Very excited. As you can see, East Los Angeles College is preparing our students to become healthcare professionals that will contribute to a dynamic workforce. We are committed to continuing to be a strong partner in the fight for affordable and accessible healthcare for all. In closing, yes. In closing, I not only want to thank Speaker Pelosi and Congresswoman Chu for encouraging this important discussion in our community, but I also want to thank the rest of you for your tireless work and advocacy for quality health care for working families. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ornelas. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Congresswoman Judy Chu. She is really one of our fearless champions in Washington, D.C., and we are really thankful for all of the work that you are doing out there and fighting for our communities. A little bit about the Congresswoman. She was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in July of 2009 and represents the 27th Congressional District, which includes Pasadena and West San Gabriel Valley of Southern California. She currently serves on the powerful House and Ways Committee. Oh, I'm sorry, House Ways and Means Committee. And I know that one well, because that's where all the health reform discussion is coming out of, and so my apologies for that. In that committee, she's a member of the subcommittees on health and human resources, giving her oversight over healthcare reform and crucial safety net programs, worker and family support, and oversight. Judy Chu was first elected to the Board of Education for Garvey School District in 1985. From there, she was elected to the Monterey Park City Council, where she served as mayor not only once, not only twice, but 3 times. And then she was elected to the State Assembly and then to the California Elected Tax Board, known as the State Board of Equalization. In 2009, she became the first Chinese American woman elected to Congress in history. And with that, I'd like to welcome Congresswoman Judy Chu.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, but you didn't mention the most important thing, which is that I taught for 13 years right here at East Los Angeles College. And that's why when I thought about doing this event, I said, we have to have it here right at ELAC where so many important things are happening. Well, I'm so excited that we are here for today's Speaker in the House event. This is one of 143 events that are being held all across the nation this weekend on healthcare. Under the leadership of Speaker Pelosi, we are having a national conversation on the need for healthcare and what we need to make sure that everybody gets the coverage that they need. And I want to thank all of you, healthcare champions and community leaders, for taking time out of your day to come to this forum about how important it is for us to do so many things, including protect and strengthen the Affordable Care Act. You know, I know healthcare is so important, especially to the people of my district. Few issues are as pressing for our families as the ability to access and afford the care that we need and the care that our loved ones need. I'll never forget, a few weeks ago, I held a press conference on the skyrocketing prices of insulin in my district. Afterwards, people were coming up to me. It struck such a chord. What I said was that a month's supply of insulin in my district costs $655, but guess what it is in Australia? $28. After that, a man in my district came to me and held up his vial of insulin and said, you know, this costs $250 here. I went to Canada and it was $25. And why should Americans be the only ones paying such exorbitant prices? It's clear there's a more affordable alternative. And that's why it's so important that we hold this event today, because healthcare touches every one of us. That's why when I got on the Ways and Means Committee in the House, I chose to be on the Health Subcommittee. I want to be on the forefront of our efforts to increase access and lower costs. And that's why I was so excited to have our speaker, Nancy Pelosi, here with us today. You know, there were 143 events across the nation, but we are the ones that got Speaker Nancy Pelosi. And we all remember when in 2007, she became the first woman Speaker of the House. But the most amazing thing is that in 2019, she did it again. And she went straight to work, making sure that we could keep our health care. On day one, she led us in making sure that we stood up for the people in having protections for our pre-existing conditions against President Trump's lawsuit to strike it down. And in the first 100 days of our new Democratic Congress, she has led us in taking significant steps in our For the People agenda, passing legislation to clean up corruption in politics, guarantee equal pay for equal work, and combating gun violence. And right now, guess what? We have the largest number of women elected to Congress in history. And it's significant because we think that that means we for sure will focus on the issues that matter most to working families, like protecting the Americans with pre-existing conditions, lowering the cost of prescription drugs, and shoring up that Affordable Care Act. And now that we have it, 20 million more people have health insurance. So we want to make sure that we help Speaker Pelosi in her mission to ensuring that all Americans are better off with their health care. And thank you for coming to today's Health Forum so that we can work together in a united way to make that happen. Thank you all very much.
Speaker Pelosi, a few words.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bernice, and thank you, Judy Chu, Congresswoman Judy Chu, also chair of KPAC. You give the exact title.
Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, KPAC.
KPAC, which is, that's my applause one. Where the Congresswoman is a leader in the Congress on issues that relate to immigration and the value that it is to our country. We'll talk more about that later. Thank you, Judy Chu, for your invitation to be here, for bringing us to where you taught for so many years. You brag about it. Now here we're here. Through the Chancellor, to the leadership of the Amanda, to Dr. Ornelas, thank you for your hospitality here today. I look forward to hearing from our former colleague, Hilda Solis, who served in the Congress with such distinction and in all of her capacities as Secretary of Labor, as well as a Congresswoman, as well as a supervisor. The healthcare issue has been at the top of her agenda. And Louise McCarthy, whom we'll be hearing from, also thank you for being here as well. Bernice, thank you for setting us up for this conversation here today. Yes, we have over 140 such events drumbeat across America for healthcare, affordable quality healthcare, how we expand it, how we make it better, how we make sure that every person in our country has access. This is a right, it is not a privilege for the few. And we come to sing your praises because in the course of the time where the president and someone on the other side of the aisle have had scores of bills to eliminate the Affordable Care Act, and we had to fight it every time to save it and then build it up bigger and grow it, the reason we were successful was, of course, we take some credit for our inside maneuvering, but that wasn't the most of it. The most of it and the best of it was the outside mobilization. 10,000 events around the country to protect the Affordable Care Act and the benefits contained therein. So this is about the grassroots. And so we come here with confidence in our vision about doing the right thing for the American people, but humble enough to be listening to what suggestions you have and how we can communicate in a manner that is well received by people so they understand. They're very wise, but we may not be communicating as wisely as we should, from your words to them on how we do the best possible job. Now, here's the thing. Right now, we are in court with the President of the United States. The Affordable Care Act is the law of the land. It's a place where the Justice Department is supposed to support the law of the land. Instead, the President has decided that instead of supporting the law of the land, it will overturn the law of the land. Talks about wanting to help with pre-existing conditions benefit as a given, and yet they want to overturn the pre-existing condition. Lifetime limits that the insurance companies had exacted on people, they want to make sure that there are limits on the care that people can receive. It just doesn't make sense. It isn't even faithful to our beliefs as religious people. But nonetheless, we're in this fight. We want to expand the Affordable Care Act to do much more for home health care, extending that for long-term care. We have many things that we want to do, some specific to the health care right now, some bigger, and we need your help to prioritize that. Just so you know, I did go to one of these. It was in my own Bay Area community, and one of my colleagues who was there with me, Jackie Spears, said this. She said that, because you talked about reference diabetes, America has 15% of the diabetes cases, 15% of the worldwide cases, and yet our people pay 50% for the drugs. It's just appalling. It's sinful, it's criminal that people should have to pay that much. So let me just get back to all of you. Being at a community college, I said to the chancellor and I said to others, if we could carpet the country with community colleges and we can carpet the country with community health centers, would be making great progress for the American people. Education, of course, is central. Public education, central to people reaching their own aspirations, but keeping America number one. And community colleges are the bridge to America's preeminence economically and people's success personally. And community health centers, culturally appropriate, linguistically clear, community health centers all over the country. If we had starting a nation right now and had no hospitals and no health care, anything else, the first thing we would do is have as many community health centers as possible, and then add to that after. So in the course of our conversation here, we'll be talking about how we can improve the Affordable Care Act, how we can add many more people, how we can do so at reduced cost, and addressing what we campaigned on last year for the people. Lower health care costs by lowering the cost of prescription drugs and guaranteeing the pre-existing condition benefit. Lower health care costs. Bigger paychecks by building the infrastructure of America in a green way. And community college is an important part of workforce development and all of that. Lower health care costs, bigger paychecks. Cleaner government by having H.R. 1, our bill, to reduce the role of big money in politics so that people believe that we can lower the cost of prescription drugs. We can get gun violence protection. We can protect our dream. We can do all these things. We can protect the planet because the big money interest will not be controlling the agenda, but the people will be controlling the agenda. So all of this is connected. You're a beautiful sight to behold. It's lovely to be here with you. I can't wait to hear what you have to say so we can learn from you and improve the way we go forward to make the future better for the American people. Thank you, East Los Angeles College.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. You know, as a representative from a community health center, we really stand ready to help spread our message and reach more people and serve even more folks that are in need. We see them every day come through our doors, and we hear the stories, and we know that healthcare is such a critical determinant, and so is education, and so are a myriad of things in our community. And so thank you. We appreciate and thank you for your leadership. I'd now like to introduce our next esteemed panelist, Los Angeles County Supervisor Hilda Solis.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and just look at this amazing group of strong women. It's incredible. I never thought in my lifetime I would see the opportunity to have a woman at the helm, the second most powerful position in the United States, and that's Speaker Pelosi. It's been a privilege to serve with her, alongside also with Congresswoman Judy Chu, who has just been outstanding. We've worked together on so many issues, collaborating to break down discrimination and also open up opportunities for people of color and especially women. And to be here with all of you and our stakeholders who are in the audience, and particularly the students, what an amazing time for us to be able to impact public policy. At the County Board of Supervisors, we represent 10 million people. And through the Affordable Care Act, we've been able to service over 1.2 million people and an additional 400,000 that are provided coverage through Covered California. But we also have another program because we've had savings in our health care, and it's a program called My Health LA for undocumented individuals, 150,000 people that receive that care. I know today we're going to talk about public charge, which is really critical because there's so many people, especially folks that we represent in our districts, that are reluctant to sign up for some of our services, including health care, because of the conversation that's taking place back east regarding limitations of individuals or populations that could access health care as well as any type of assistance that's provided by the federal government. So that, along with the ACA, and also maybe a little bit about the census and how important that is to where we go forward. Just want to say thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Welcome also to the 1st District and also to the Congressional District here, and also to ELAC, a home of the Wolverines, right? Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you, Supervisor Solis. I would now like to introduce my colleague and friend, Louise McCarthy. Louise is the president and CEO of the Community Clinic Association of Los Angeles County, where she represents the interests of LA area community clinics and health centers and those they serve. Prior to taking this role, she was the Assistant Director of Policy for the California Primary Care Association, also worked for our state of California in the Bureau of State Audits and for the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. Ms. McCarthy is also the chair-elect of the California Primary Care Association and the past board chair of LA Care Health Plan. She holds a Master of Public Policy from UCLA School of Public Affairs. Go Bruins. Go Bruins. And please help me welcome Louise McCarthy.
Thank you all. It's really just an incredible honor to be on this stage with these powerhouse women, and I'm a little intimidated, but I will just put my back into it. So as mentioned, I'm Louise, and I run the Clinic Association of LA County. We're the coalition of all the community clinics and community health centers across LA. That includes the federally qualified health centers and the Planned Parenthoods. For my healthcare people in the house, can I hear anyone from the healthcare field? Okay. So all you folks that just clapped, I do want to make note, there was a bunch of students over here that I believe are studying some allied health professions. So if you're looking for jobs, we've got a job board on our website and a resume distribution service. The clinics are hiring, and we would love to have you come work for us. So what a difference a day makes, or what a difference 3 years make. In 2016, just 1 year after we passed a strategic plan for our members, and we looked at 3 big priority issues, in December 2016, I went back to my members and I said, do we need a different strategic plan? Are we gonna have to change what our priorities are? Are we gonna have to do things differently? And one clinic CEO said to me, no, Louise, everything that matters matters more than ever now, because we have to fight for it. We have to fight to integrate services and to make sure that those integrated services are covered. We have to demonstrate our value more than ever before, not just to compete for the newly covered patients, but also for members of Congress and the elected officials to see our value and to know that investing in healthcare matters. And we absolutely have to innovate, because if we don't innovate, there may be cuts. And if we need to figure out how to do more with less, let's start now while we have more. And so we doubled down on our strategic priorities, and really, when you talked about the grassroots action, over 1,000 community health center patients and staff were in downtown LA in 2017 on the anniversary of the Affordable Care Act, marching and rallying for the Affordable Care Act. Our patients got up and told their stories. People even like me talked about my own journey on Medicaid and how that made me have a life of opportunity instead of one of hardship. These stories and the personal interaction that we have with our healthcare is what matters, because healthcare is so very personal. And so when we get up to policy discussions, and it can really, we sometimes depersonalize, take the human out of the human aspect of what's being considered. And that's the reason why it's so important that we have elected officials that come to community meetings, that listen to us, that look at the faces of those impacted by healthcare, and for better or for worse, they listen and they bring those stories. So I just really want to advocate to you to continue to tell your stories about what matters to you and how policies impact you, because no one knew how many people cared about the Affordable Care Act until they tried to take it away from them. So that made a big difference. So I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
So thank you all for really kicking us off in the best way, and really reminding everyone how critical healthcare is. You know, I always say coverage does not equal access. And the ACA is a wonderful law that has not only expanded coverage for folks who really never had access to care, but also, you know, consumer protections and other nitty-gritty details that the consumer is not necessarily familiar with. You know, us healthcare folks, we know how important it is to not have a lifetime maximum on an insurance, and have a condition like cancer and say, hey, by the way, your insurance has been canceled. And so those protections are now in place, and our administration and elected officials are really attacking the law. And it really is, you know, it's really hard to see, especially as community health centers. You know, we see these folks every single day, and we're starting to see that fear. And they're fearing utilizing their healthcare services and their coverage. And so, Speaker Pelosi, I think my question to you is, what can we do to really strengthen the ACA today to make sure that the roots are as deep as possible so that it could withstand some of these attacks that are currently going on?
Thank you, Bernice. Let me just thank you all for your comments. Judy Chu, on one of the committees of jurisdiction, a primary committee of jurisdiction, Ways and Means Committee and choosing the Healthcare Committee. It's a highly competed for, but you know she's a tough competitor, so she got that assignment in the Ways and Means Committee. But they are working on some issues right now and proposals to strengthen the Affordable Care Act. But let me just tell you a couple of the things. First of all, I want to associate myself with what Louise said about the stories. The stories are the most eloquent and persuasive arguments. We had the little lobbyists, little children born with a pre-existing condition, with lifetime pre-existing condition, unless there's an intervention from the Affordable Care Act, which it provided. But patient advocacy groups, just families telling their stories. No statistics, no policy statements can match. You're telling the stories. That's what saved the Affordable Care, passed it in the first place and saved it after that, and will continue to save it. Some of the things I would have liked to have done in the Affordable Care Act, but we are bicameral legislature in their eyes, but I think that we can do is, first of all, and we have a plan to raise the income level of those who get subsidies so that more people are not sort of left behind in that. Second of all, we had reinsurance in the bill, but when it expired, we no longer had the majority, so we have to put the reinsurance back in the legislation. We have to fight this case in court that the president has in court against wanting to repeal the entire Affordable Care Act. Well, we have to protect that. We have to win that case. And people said to me when we won the election, not to talk politics, but just civics, when we won that election in November, it was healthcare, 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 healthcare. And they said, how come healthcare was such an important issue in the campaign? Well, it was because it's so important in people's lives. It's not only, I don't have to tell you, about their health care, their good health. It's about their financial stability that is affected by a diagnosis and accident if people do not have access to affordable quality health care in a way that is affordable to them. That's why it's called the Affordable Care Act, with a subtitle of patient protections that go with it. Thank you for mentioning that. Some of the things, though, one of the biggest adjustments that we have to make, and we couldn't do it to the extent we wanted to before, but we have to do it now, is to lower the cost of prescription drugs. That is the reason when we passed the Affordable Care Act, if people all love their affordable care, their insurers, their care, everything, it still would have needed to be passed because the costs were unsustainable to individuals, to families, to businesses, to institutions, to the public sector, to the federal government, locally as well. We had to take down the cost, and we did in a very significant way. But the only place where those costs continue to add to the cost of health care are with the prescription drug benefit. So we're trying to work in a bipartisan way with the president. Hopefully, it will happen. And he says he wants to do it, so we want to find our common ground to lower the cost of prescription drugs. There are all kinds of proposals on the table, and they're all to be considered. But we do have a path, we think, with him that will be effective in lowering the cost of prescription drugs generally, and also specifically to seniors, that will put the money we save into Medicare to strengthen Medicare for a longer period of time, to make sure that our Medicaid eligible people are treated with the respect they deserve and have access. Now, we make a big thing about the investments in science at the National Institutes of Health. We will have in our budget a big increase in funding for the National Institutes of Health. The biblical power to cure, so important. But we want that for everybody in our country. I do believe that the wealthiest, most privileged person in America is health. That person's health is well served if the poorest person in America has access to quality, affordable health care. We're all in this together. So we want the benefits of our research and our federal investments and all the rest to be something that reaches everyone. So we do have a list of issues, as I said, even broader than the Affordable Care Act when we talk about long-term care, much of which is paid for right now by Medicaid, but we have to have a more, shall we say, assured source of funding for families, because that is a middle income and those who aspire to the middle class issue. It can undermine the financial stability of families. Home health care, very important. I know many of you here are interested in that. So again, we have to prioritize. We have to be smart about what we are proposing, understand that it gets the results intended, A. B, we have to pay for it in a way that reduces the cost to all Americans. And we have an array of changes that we are proposing, but welcome any suggestions that you may have. I myself, we had in the House bill a public option. I'm still wanting to try to get a public option, but we didn't. The only thing we had in the House bill that succeeded was to enable states to have a public option. And may I say how proud we are of Governor Gavin Newsom for how he has gone forward with protecting health care in California.
Thank you. So I want to take a moment just to remind everyone that after our discussion, we are going to be answering questions from you all, the audience. So I believe you all were handed a white card on your way in, and so there are folks around that are available to collect those cards. So I just wanted to give you all that reminder. Representative Chu, Speaker Pelosi just alluded to some proposals that are on the table. Can you tell us about those?
Well, one thing that the Trump administration is trying to do to undermine the Affordable Care Act is to offer by executive order junk plans and to allow states to be even able to use their federal dollars to promote these junk plans. Now, what are these junk plans? These plans hardly cover a fraction of what the Affordable Care Act does, and not only that, a person who thinks they're getting a really good deal may go and when they have a serious illness find that it hardly covers anything. So we think that that would be very detrimental. We passed a bill saying that there should not be this ability to buy the junk plans and to have that qualify as a medical plan that they should have. But we're also being very proactive on prescription drugs. Now, pharmaceutical companies have done such things as have a pay-for-play for generics, preventing generics from being able to be qualified and delaying their advance on the market. Well, we had a bill that we just passed out to stop that. And in the Ways and Means Committee, we just passed out a transparency bill saying that if a pharmaceutical company wants to raise the rate of their drug, let's say over 3 years by 26%, then they have to justify it to the federal government. And actually, my part in that bill has to do with samples. There are so many samples that the pharmaceutical companies pass out that they actually spend more on that than they do on commercial advertising and more on that than they do on research for their drugs. So I am pushing for transparency in terms of how much they're spending on this because we know that the amount of OxyContin samples that they passed out have something to do with the opioid crisis.
Thank
On the junk plans, it's seductive. It looks good because you have a low premium, but you have an enormous deductible, like $6,500 or something like that. And when people get sick or diagnosed or have an accident, this descends upon them. They were just giving money to the insurance company for no coverage at all, just practically no coverage at all. And the administration has this as a special interest agenda for the insurance company. So we had a young man who testified at our hearing on Saturday who said he had this plan and he didn't realize when he got sick that It was worthless. And when he got cancer, he was diagnosed with cancer, they said to him, to getting back to Berenice's point, they said to him, they wanted his whole history since he was a baby. He's like in his 30s. His whole history since he was of every report from every doctor, because they were going to find some pre-existing condition in there that he had not, shall we say, admitted to. They're not even supposed to be preventing you from getting care because of pre-existing conditions, but they were trying to create a scenario. But they said to him when he had cancer and then heart disease hit, he was not a well person. Now he is because of the Affordable Care Act. But beware of these junk plans, because that is exactly what they are, junk, and people are paying for them for getting no value whatsoever back.
I'm shaking my head because it's, we're backsliding here in terms of, this is again the like I mentioned, the patient protection part of the Affordable Care Act. A lot of this stuff really doesn't translate so much to the consumer. They only find out when they go to the pharmacy and they're trying to get their insulin and the price is through the roof. Or something changes and they go into the doctor and they say, you know what, you're not covered for that. And it's way too late at that point. And so, so thank you for fighting on the patient protection side. I do want to ask Supervisor Solis, you've been a champion in our communities here locally, and really when you were in your national, under the Obama administration as a Secretary of Labor. And you've really worked hard to address health disparities in minority communities. And so I want to ask if you can really talk to us about maybe proposals that are really on the table right now here locally in Los Angeles to strengthen the ACA.
Well, I want to also give a shout out to our governor, Gavin Newsom, who actually visited with us on his 100th day in office. And we had this big event out at one of our hospitals. And he unveiled a program there that would help reduce pharmaceutical costs. And what he frankly said was, why don't we pull our money together with counties, with other public entities, as well as other states that may be enticed to help us come together, pool our money, and then reduce costs. And it was brought to my attention that here in the county of Los Angeles, we spend annually about $250 million just on pharmaceuticals. Now, if we could reduce that, cut it in half through this proposal that the governor put forward, that'll save us $150 million that we could spend on other preventive measures. So that's one that we're looking at right now, and I know our Department of Health Services Director is here, Christina Galli, who was there with us that day when that announcement was made. But we can do so much more, and I want to just briefly touch on, I know we may have some in-home healthcare workers and others. I don't know if there's any promotoras in the room, but those are healthcare navigators, and that was one thing that came out as a benefit in the ACA, that we could have community people who had lived experiences that could go out in our community and work with us, whether it was public health or DHS or even mental health, and start to talk really about what some of the illnesses or lack of service that was being spoken about from our constituents. And once we learned that, we could actually put together a plan. So through ACA, we had more resources to be able to do the prevention side. And it's always been about prevention, because the more we can do to educate the public, especially immigrant populations and individuals that may not have access to health care as readily available as others, it's a big divider. You're going to be able to prolong your life. You're going to also be able to help your family. And that's empowering. Just being able to give that kind of power and information to people to navigate the healthcare system was remarkable. So we want to do more. We want to work with the Congress. We want to work with a new president, I hope, that will help. But I also want to underscore how important it is to have good elected officials that are responsible. So thank you.
Thank you. So I want to turn our attention to women's health. Yeah. it really has been really shocking to see the activity, the actions that are happening across the country around abortion rights, around the Title X program and having access to family planning services. These programs are also under attack. And so I just want to throw the question out to that panel on what's next for this activity around abortions, Roe versus Wade, and then the Title X program. Is there any hope on the horizon for that program?
Well, this is, I don't want to be a fearmonger, but this is scary. This is really dangerous, what they're trying to do to a woman's right to choose. I'm here with my daughter, one of my 5 children. Christine is the chair of the Women's Caucus of the California Democratic Party, where women's health issues are a very high priority for them. So I hear it all the time. Here's the thing, though. This is really dangerous. What they're doing is dangerous. So a couple different questions that were there. One of them is about a woman's right to choose, and what business is it of any politicians, judges, or anybody else? Really? Really? But they're on a path. They're on a path, and there were certain elements in our country usually we can work with because of religious reasons, of respecting the dignity and worth of people who have completely gone with the president just so they get those justices on the Supreme Court. That was what the election was about, those justices on the Supreme Court. There were other subjects, et cetera, but the issue that made the biggest difference was really one issue, 2 aspects of it: marriage equality and Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade. So that's what that's about. Okay, so on these cases around the country, we have to be very careful because what they would like to do is quickly get up to the Supreme Court and either overturn Roe v. Wade, which I think is seriously in jeopardy, or to make rulings that make it easier for states to overturn Roe v. Wade. So that's something where public sentiment, where the personal stories are so very, very important. In addition, at the same time, what they're doing on Title X is to say to community health centers or other Planned Parenthood, other entities that receive Title X money, to prevent them from receiving the funds if they're going to make sure women have every option explained to them in terms of women's health, including abortion rights. So where I was on Saturday in San Francisco at that health center, they said, we cannot jeopardize women's health. We would have to turn down their money and get money someplace else for our Title X purposes, because this is serious jeopardy to women's health. Then the third aspect of it that they just put out within 10 days or so is fetal tissue research. They're saying they won't have any funding for fetal tissue research, which is the biblical power to cure. This is where we find so many discoveries that fight disease and, again, find cures. And so in every way, there is an assault because they ignore science. It's a funny thing because they don't believe in governance. They don't want clean air, clean water, food safety, all those things that governments do. They don't want this, they don't want that, they don't want, but they, big government when it comes to a woman's right to choose. Big government there. So this, we have a fight on our hands. But I'll tell you this one thing. For my first 25 years in the Congress, I was banging my head up against a brick wall trying to say to people they don't support family planning. Nobody would believe that. Until just a few years ago, they decided they were going, when they had the majority, that they would take away all the funding for Planned Parenthood. They don't believe in family planning. So it's not just about terminating a pregnancy. It's about preventing money going to people. If you don't like terminating a pregnancy, you should love family planning, right? But they do not support that, understand that. So that's why when you look at the Congress and you see an endless line of white men standing there to sign the book to overturn a woman's right to choose, you think, what right do they have? And I said to them, look, I have 5 children. I'm Catholic, 5 children. When I had my 5th baby, my husband and I took our baby home that week. Our oldest child was turning 6. So I said, any of you have had 5 babies in 6 years? We can have a conversation. God blessed us with that, but that doesn't mean that's what other people should do, and we should decide that in the Congress of the United States. And they said back, just so you know what we're dealing with, a number of years ago when we had this discussion then, they said on the floor of the House, Nancy Pelosi thinks she knows more about having babies than the Pope. Yes, yes. So anyway, this is a big fight. This is what the presidential election was about. That's why when he said he would appoint certain judges, that gave him the imprimatur, the seal of approval from certain elements in our country, that we work with on other good things. But on this issue of a woman's right to choose, it is a red line in the sand, and we cannot let that stand.
I just want to add just one piece on here, is to say, it seems strange to say, hi, my name's Louise and I believe in science. But unfortunately, we're in a world where that is the case, and we have to have arguments over science. Those Title X family planning rules weren't just about advising on abortion. It was about telling people to do natural family planning. Yeah, My name's Louise, and I believe in science. So we know the rhythm method doesn't matter. But I just want to point out that we have opportunities here. You know, anytime any of these rules come out, we can submit comments as general people, and tell our stories. And honestly, when we do submit comments, as we saw with the Medicaid work requirements in Kentucky, I believe that was the state it happened in, they actually got rid of the work requirements because people submitted comments. So when the Title X family planning rule went out, people submitted comments. And then we sued. And thankfully, there's an injunction. So I just want to also recognize that we also have an attorney general, and there are attorneys general across the U.S. who are helping us in this fight as well. It is scary if something does go to the Supreme Court. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But hopefully, we can find more people that believe in science and understand that science is a real thing, who will fight alongside with us. So I just wanted to make that note.
So Title X is so important for funding contraceptive care and preventive care to low-income women all across the United States, and it's a main source of funding for our wonderful Planned Parenthood. But the Trump administration has constantly undermined it with its executive orders, including having a gag rule on doctors. Can you imagine that? Telling doctors that they cannot tell their patients the full range of options there. It actually would put duct tape on their mouth so that they could not tell a woman about an abortion or any other choice that she may have with regard to her future. So the judges, thankfully, have stopped this, but we also need to step forth, and that's why in the appropriations process, which we've just gone through, we have a measure in there that stops the Trump gag rule from going forth and also reinstates all the money that would normally go there. And in terms of these states like Alabama saying that a doctor would have to spend 99 years in jail if that doctor performed an abortion, and that a woman couldn't have an abortion in case of incest or rape, well, we decided that we had to come together and have a bill, the Women's Health Protection Act, which says that abortion should be a right in every state, will be a right in every state, and even if Roe versus Wade is struck down, this bill would ensure that every woman would have a right to her full range of choice in this nation. And we have 180 co-sponsors in the House. We have 42 co-sponsors in the Senate. It is the most co-sponsored, proactive, pro-choice bill in Congress. So we are doing things to fight back.
Thank you for that. Before we go to the audience Q&A, I didn't want to end this portion of the program before talking about public charge. And so we were here a couple of months ago, Ultimate. We had a town hall. Congresswoman Judy Chu came out. And the reason that we were pushed to really do an event of that level, at that level, was, you know, there was a time, I remember, when regulations would come out and it was just the administrators that handled it, and we would submit comments and everything. But this time around, I found myself really having to go into the clinics, talking to the patients, educating community members on what these regulations are really, what they really mean and the real impact. So to close out this portion, I do have a question for both Congresswoman Judy Chu and Louise McCarthy on public charge. Can you talk about some of the recent activity that you've been leading in Congress related to public charge, please?
This is such a horrendous rule that's being proposed by President Trump. Formerly, now I should say currently, the public charge rule, which would say that you would be denied the ability to get a green card, would only occur in relationship to cash assistance programs such as supplemental security income or TANF. But what Trump wants to do is to say that if you partake of any federal program like food stamps, then you could be denied a green card because you are so-called public charge. So this has frightened many people. They think that it's already in place. Actually, the rule is not in place. There's been a comment period. There were 250,000 comments on this, and the majority, of course, were opposed to this rule. But some immigrants are even now not signing up. And so the most important message we could give to people is that they have the right to sign up, because this rule has not been in place. We don't want to deprive people of their ability to get health care when they need it. But also, I have introduced the No Federal Funds for Public Charge Act, and this is a response to this. We have 36 co-sponsors of Congress, and it's an important message for us to say that this is not right.
Louise, I wanted you to talk a little bit about, and when you respond to her, if you could include a little bit about what we're seeing at the clinic level.
So the whole public charge issue has been, first it was a leaked executive order draft, quite, feels like ages ago now, and then that was the scariest moment. When I got my first leaked document from the White House, it was this. And that was a moment where I said, I don't really want to get leaks from this White House. I will send this back, thank you very much. But it has caused so much confusion. There are immigration attorneys here in Los Angeles County telling their clients to disenroll from programs. Right, is right. So unfortunately, because they're looking at this, they think it's the law of the land. It's not. People should be getting their due. The added confusion for us here in SoCal is that, or in California period, is that our families live in mixed status families. So you might have a citizen child whose parent is not taking advantage of resources that child could be getting because of fear of their status and their desire to get a green card later. So we are seeing anecdotally stories about people saying, can you disenroll me from Medi-Cal? I'd rather pay cash. Can I go back to My Health LA, the county program, because I understand that that's not part of this. It's really had a chilling effect, I think also with everything else around TPS and DACA and all of the tenor of immigration and the discussions in immigration. My first immigration meeting in this new administration in 2017 I went to in DC, the lawyers handed out tissues. You know it's going to be a bad meeting. But I think it's really important for us in this room, if you're part of education and if you're part of healthcare, you're someone who's trusted People come and get information from you, and they trust you as a resource. So I think the community health centers, similarly, our educational institutions are all places where families can find information about what the truth is, and hopefully debunk what some of these immigration lawyers are saying. And hopefully we've actually done some outreach to the local bar association to say what else can be done to educate them about this, because it really can cause, it's just that level of confusion that can end up making some very risky decisions for people. We're talking about your nutrition, we're talking about your health care, and your livelihood of that of your family. So it's absolutely critical that people are educated and understand the consequences.
Could I say something?
Absolutely,
You know,
please.
LA County is home to 3.2 million immigrants, and many of those are mixed families. And we've seen a reduction in applicants coming forward and wanting to disenroll in programs. And it's really disheartening because you have children who are eligible by law, and parents are not coming forward, whether it's coming in for even childcare services, immunizations, to very basic things. People are afraid to even take up Section 8 housing, vouchers. And right now we have a homeless crisis in Los Angeles. Over 60,000 people on a given night are homeless. What I see happening is if this proposed rule goes forward, we will have more homelessness, we'll have more misery, and we'll have more people that won't have the kinds of services that the county can provide right now. We have to do more. We also have established an Office of Immigrant Affairs, and I have a phone number if people are interested in calling, because the county, all our departments are being asked to help provide assistance and try to debunk this myth, because it is not a law. So if I could give the number out, it's 1-800-593-8222, 1-800-593-8222. And just to remind people, the county has put in $3 million to provide legal assistance, legal aid. So people can call, we can refer them to legal aid services, and hopefully help them work through this process. But we want to encourage people to come to the County of Los Angeles and to not be disheartened, because we're also fighting alongside with the AG and with all of our partners to see that we can stop this wrong-headed move. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I'm going to transition us to our audience Q&A. So our first question is from Donna Bagarian from Pasadena, California. We've all heard horror stories of people going in for vital surgery and other health care and then being slapped with an enormous unexpected bill for some facet of their care that isn't covered by insurance. Are there any plans to protect consumers from these surprise bills at the federal level?
Well, we just had a hearing in Ways and Means on surprise medical billing, and it is a horrendous problem. It has to do with the fact that we have such a mishmash of different insurance plans. And actually, our Congress member, Katie Porter, told her own story where she had an emergency appendectomy. Can you believe it? She had the presence of mind to ask whether the emergency room was in her network, and it was, but it turned out that the person doing the operation was not. And so she got a $20,000 bill, and she had perfectly good insurance from UC Irvine, where she was a professor. And the only reason she was able to get out from under it is because UCI had to hire somebody who's actually full-time on that, in that university, who advocates and basically challenges the insurance companies on the surprise medical billing. But people face this all the time. And so, yes, we had a hearing on the different alternatives, and California actually does have a model where you can challenge this surprise medical billing and ultimately not be charged. Well, first of all, the patient should not be getting these billings, but basically the agreement should be that the provider gets 125% of Medicare. New York has another model where there is arbitration between the different parties, but we have to make sure that we address this problem, because this is what is driving people into bankruptcy.
Thank you. Our second question is from Daniel Gaitan from Corona, California. With an increasingly aging population, chronic diseases are dramatically impacting our entire healthcare system. Alzheimer's, in particular, is now America's most expensive disease. As healthcare for all proposals continue to be debated, what measures are being considered to ensure diseases like Alzheimer's are being mitigated?
Actually, I just was at a meeting with the Alzheimer's Association on Friday, and we were doing a congressional discussion. Some of it's actually related to the science and the correlation between cardiovascular health and Alzheimer's. And so what we're looking at, and there's a lot to be done in the world of prevention. If people stop smoking now, if we can get hypertension under control, there's actually some indications that that can actually stave off the onset of Alzheimer's. And so as we're thinking about, certainly, one, the baby boomer population aging, and the fact that, you know, we are going to have to gear up for a lot more senior care going forward for folks of all spectrum of health. It's really important that we ready ourselves for that. Some of the health centers around Los Angeles actually do run programs of all-inclusive care for the elderly, places where they, like Altamed, for example, where folks can go and get services and resources. But I think the one thing on the Alzheimer's side is to say, continuing the research. The second is then acting upon it. And so what are the health conditions associated or correlated with onset of Alzheimer's, hypertension, and cardiovascular health being one?
Could I just add something from the county? We had an initiative with the city of Los Angeles, with the mayor, Eric Garcetti, called Purposeful Aging. Because while we can't address Alzheimer in the way that we would like to, what we think we can also do is create a better quality of life to allow for longevity in a meaningful way, so that there's activity, there's stimulus, that there's all kinds of other treatments that we can provide, and interacting with our seniors and letting them have a role and a distinction to be able to say they still have something to give. And we're trying to interact with our libraries, with all of our other departments, so that they also are a mainstay and a main population that we are caring for. People are going to live longer. We need more in-home healthcare services, especially in the immigrant community. We tend to want to keep our folks home, and we know that it is a cost savings if we can have providers that come into our home that are culturally and linguistically competent. I think those are very essential things that the county's doing through our workforce training programs to assure that we have more healthcare professionals that are from our community and look like our community, can help sustain the quality of life for our seniors so they age in dignity.
I just may, if I may, Bernice, thank you for bringing up the subject of Alzheimer's, and we had a big contingent at our event on Saturday as well, but we do all over the country, because all over the country people are affected by this. This is an issue where we must have much more money, and we are increasing the research funding in the NIH budget that we're putting forth, but we even want more than that. This is a challenge. It's a thief. It comes and it steals. It steals memory. It steals family life. It's a horrible thing. But if you just took away the humanity of it and just had a practical argument, you would say, I mean, we can't take away the humanity of it, but if you were to, and just to say, because of Alzheimer's and the fact that we haven't found a cure yet, or a way to improve the quality of life in an important way that is safe for the person diagnosed and their families, this will cost the country hundreds of billions of dollars in productivity each year, from the person who is diagnosed, from their family members who have to spend time taking care of them. So any investments in research, biomedical research, any investments in how we care for people in the facilities or at home is a small price to pay for the quality of life and the productivity that we may be able to recapture. It is a challenge of a huge magnitude. And again, if we just treat it in a humanitarian way, that would be the right thing to do. But if we don't treat it as the right thing to do, we will have costs that are so enormous because we missed the opportunity to do the right thing. So we thank, again, the advocacy, the eloquence of the stories, the rest of it, all that we learned from families with, shall we say, experiencing this. I don't want to say challenge because I'll say experiences will help us with public policy on this. But what we have to do at the federal level and other ways is a small price to pay for the quality of life for these people and the productivity that they add to our country. Thank you.
So I just wanted to ask our esteemed panel here, which, by the way, it's been an honor for me to moderate this conversation. And maybe we can start with Louise and just a final word, final message for our audience.
First of all, I'm really thankful to be here. The one thing we didn't touch on was the census, and I hope that everybody here in the room is thinking about the census in 2020 and about how we're going to get out the census. California, in particular Los Angeles, is at risk for losing a member of Congress through this. If we do not turn out and make our names on those rolls and make sure that our neighbors do as well, we have so much to lose. Representation, funding, resources, it's absolutely critical. So and that's what we need to continue to defend the Affordable Care Act. That's going to be what we need to continue to defend immigrant communities. And so I think it's just really important for us to think about this holistically, that if we as an engaged citizenry really do work on civic engagement in our communities, we will be able to defend all of these things that matter to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Wow. I'm just going to piggyback on that as well, because the county, as you know, is one of those counties that is undercounted. And what that meant for us in the last 10 years is that we missed out on over $650 million. That means less childcare, that means less meals for seniors, it means less health care. But also how we treat our young people and elderly, as we were just speaking about. So I want to encourage, especially our immigrant community, not to be afraid. And if you feel that you are not clear on filling out the application, we have people that will help you. I gave the number earlier. You can call that same number. And in addition, I would just say to you that it's very critical that we understand that it is a constitutional right for everyone to participate in the census. That is by law. And someone who doesn't respect the rule of law really doesn't understand our Constitution. So we really need to understand that this is our privilege, our right, and we need to exercise that. So thank you.
I just want to say how special it is that at this event we had our own speaker, Nancy Pelosi. And she's really kept this drumbeat up about raising our voices on health care. Health care is the #1 issue in this nation. And the last time that the other side of the aisle was trying to do away with the Affordable Care Act, it was the people who stopped that from happening. In fact, there were so many town halls where people came out, but people called the Congress, they sent all those emails. In fact, they called Congress so much that they closed the switchboards. There were so many calls. So it was amazing to see how many people raised their voices on this issue. We need to keep that drumbeat up. We need to keep it up all the way till the 2020 elections for sure.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today with a distinguished member of Congress, Judy Chu, with Hilda Solis, your supervisor, with Louise McCarthy, representing the nonprofit sector of all of this, and with you, Berenice, and with each and every one of you. I just want to pick up on the census because it is really central to everything else we have spoken about. We the people. That's the way our Constitution begins. We the people. Who are the people? The people are a nation of immigrants, unless you're blessed to be born a Native American, which is a blessing, but by and large, a nation of immigrants. We the people, in the Constitution of the United States, of which we the people begins the preamble, says that every 10 years there will be an enumeration of the people of the United States of America. It doesn't say citizens, anything like that. It just says the people of the United States of America, the count. This attempt on the part of this administration, and we are in court with them now before the Supreme Court. Our office testified. Congress had standing. They try to deprive us of standing. No, we have standing because it determines what Congress is. More importantly, it determines how we meet the needs of the American people, has been demonstrated. If you have a lower number, you can have fewer resources. But this is something that is under investigation as to why they would put a citizenship question in the census thing. It has a chilling effect. People don't want to respond, but they must respond. So one of the things we're fighting, in addition to fighting them in court, and it really makes me quite angry because it defies the Constitution of the United States. We're fighting them in court, and it's in the Supreme Court, so we'll see what they decide. In addition to that, we're saying we need sufficient resources, tunes of billions of dollars, more than they had planned to spend. Because, and your experience will speak more eloquently than I could tell you. They're saying, oh, well, it'll take one, most people will sign up on the social media, electronically. No. Why are you concluding that this large number is going to, maybe many people will, but many more people will not than you have concluded? And then you're telling us it'll take one or two knocks at the door? No. You're going to give up on somebody because they didn't answer the door once or twice. People don't even want to answer the door, so much less to a stranger coming like that. So we have to have community people talking to other people who have their trust, culturally, linguistically, values-wise, and the rest, that you should sign up. The victory for the other side would be if people said, because it asks the citizenship question, I'm not going to answer the census question. And that is what they're hoping for. We cannot let that happen. We're still hoping to win in court. Our case is so strong that they are doing this for a reason that has nothing to do with an accurate count and everything to do with something else, which I won't go into here because we're not talking politics. Now, that takes us to the other thing. Who is it that they're cutting out with the citizenship question, except newcomers to America? And I wish that they would all follow the guidance of Ronald Reagan, of all presidents, for me to quote here today. Ronald Reagan said in his last speech, this is the last speech I will make as President of the United States. And I have a message I want to communicate to a country I love. And he went on to talk about the Statue of Liberty and the beacon of hope that was to the world. And basically he said, and I ask you to go Google it or whatever it is you do, to read his speech because it's longer and more eloquent. But he basically says the vital force of America's preeminence in the world is every generation of newcomers who come to America. And when America fails to recognize that role, America will fail to be preeminent in the world. He then goes on to say we cannot close the door. We cannot close the door to new immigrants to our country because, again, they are the source of the vitality of America. And other presidents, President Reagan, President George Herbert Walker Bush, President Clinton, President George W. Bush, very passionate about immigration, President Obama, all subscribe to the fact that all the vitality, the hope, determination, courage that newcomers bring to America, well, they're American traits, and these newcomers make America more American. Except what's happening now, however you want to refer to that, what's happening now. Bad enough that they would not accept what it means, we the people, but to then try to undermine it numerically with a question on the census. We cannot let that happen. So tell your friends and all the rest, don't give them this victory. Check the box for being here, but don't. They see. I think that they're making the case that you have to check the citizenship box too. It's in doubt. We're fighting that as well. But be counted. Be counted. And we're fighting it to make it as easy as possible. But don't count yourself out, because that's exactly what the other side wants to do. They don't believe in science and meeting the needs. They don't believe in governance. And they apparently do not believe that we are a nation of immigrants whose vitality springs from all those newcomers, as Ronald Reagan told them. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share some thoughts about that.
So to close, I just like to thank Madam Speaker Pelosi. I would also like to thank Congressman Solis and Louise McCarthy for being here today. And I'll leave you with this. 2020 is coming. Stand up for healthcare, be counted. Our communities need you, and stand up for those that can't stand up for themselves. Thank you.